Jasmine Williams stared at her phone in disbelief. 3 million views. Her hands trembled as another notification lit up her screen. Reuters confirms Skyline Airways stock plummets 40% after viral racial incident. Just 72 hours ago, she'd been just another passenger at LAX airport until that white agent had sneered, "I don't speak ghetto." Now the entire travel industry was in an uproar, and the empire Jasmine had quietly built was about to change American business forever. Before we dive into this incredible story of power, prejudice, and transformation, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of truth seekers who believe in accountability. You won't believe how one woman's dignity turned the tables on corporate America overnight. Long before Jasmine Williams became the quiet powerhouse behind a near-billion-dollar travel empire, she was just a little girl with big dreams growing up in the historic streets of Savannah, Georgia. The sultry southern heat and swaying moss-draped oaks of her childhood concealed the harsh reality of her circumstances. A single mother working 3 cleaning jobs at local hotels just to keep food on the table. Mama always said, "Baby girl, you watch how they run these hotels. Someday you might own one," Jasmine would later recall in rare interviews. Those hotels where her mother scrubbed toilets and changed sheets for wealthy white tourists became Jasmine's first classroom in business. At 37, Jasmine had transformed from that hotel maid's observant daughter into the founder and CEO of Black Voyagers Collective, a powerhouse consortium connecting over 300 Black-owned travel agencies across America. Her business card might have said CEO, but her influence remained intentionally under the radar. She preferred results over recognition, impact over accolades. The childhood that shaped her business acumen was anything but easy. Their small apartment in a neglected part of Savannah often went without air conditioning during brutal Georgia summers. School presented its own challenges, with teachers who frequently overlooked Jasmine's raised hand and administrators who seemed surprised by her aptitude for mathematics and strategic thinking. I remember being told college wasn't realistic. For someone from my neighborhood, Jasmine once shared with a group of young Black entrepreneurs. That word, realistic, it's often code for stay in your place. Everything changed when Jasmine's church sponsored a youth trip to Washington, D.C. during her sophomore year of high school. The 14-hour bus ride north exposed her to a world beyond Georgia's borders. Standing before the Lincoln Memorial, something clicked for the 15-year-old. Travel could transform perspective, and perspective could transform lives. With a newfound determination, Jasmine threw herself into her studies. Her bedroom walls became covered with maps instead of boy band posters. She started a small neighborhood business creating personalized travel itineraries for church members planning family vacations, charging just $10 per plan. "People thought I was crazy spending all that time researching places I'd never been," she told her staff years later. "But I was building something they couldn't see yet." Her academic performance eventually earned her a partial scholarship to Howard University, but it wasn't enough. Undeterred, Jasmine worked nights at a local hotel while carrying a full course load in Howard's business program. Those exhausting years taught her resilience and revealed her purpose, identifying the massive untapped potential in the Black travel market. Her senior thesis, The Undervalued Billion, African American Travel Expenditure and Market Opportunity, became the blueprint for what would eventually become Black Voyagers Collective. The paper argued that despite Black Americans spending over $100 billion annually on travel, the industry largely ignored, underserved, or actively discriminated against this powerful consumer segment. Upon graduation, the real battle began. With her business plan in hand, Jasmine approached bank after bank for startup funding. The rejections piled up, each one thinly veiling the prejudice behind the denial. "Your concept seems niche," one loan officer said, unable to hide his skepticism. "We're concerned about the viability of focusing exclusively on that demographic," said another. Jasmine documented every rejection, every microaggression, every doubtful glance. They fueled her resolve rather than diminishing it. With no institutional backing, she pooled resources with 3 Howard classmates and opened her first storefront agency in Atlanta, a tiny space with secondhand furniture and a shared computer. What they lacked in capital, they made up for in innovation. Jasmine pioneered cultural heritage tours connecting African Americans with sites significant to Black history both domestically and internationally. Her signature Roots and Returns packages to West African countries created emotional journeys that larger agencies couldn't replicate. Word spread through Black churches, sororities, fraternities, and professional organizations. Within 3 years, Jasmine's little agency had grown enough to open a second location in Charlotte. By year 5, she had developed a different vision. Rather than expanding her individual brand, she began building a network of Black-owned travel agencies across the country. "We're stronger together," became her mantra as she approached independent Black-owned agencies with her consortium concept. "The airlines and hotel chains ignore us individually, but they can't ignore us collectively." The model was revolutionary. Small agencies maintained their independence and local character, while gaining the purchasing power and technological infrastructure of a much larger organization. Jasmine's consortium negotiated preferential rates with airlines, hotel chains, and cruise companies by leveraging their combined booking volume. By her 10th year in business, Black Voyagers Collective had grown to 50 agencies. By year 15, over 300 agencies had joined, collectively representing nearly $1 billion in annual travel bookings. All while Jasmine maintained a deliberately low profile in the broader business world. Which is why, on that fateful morning, when Jasmine arrived at Los Angeles International Airport for what should have been a routine flight to New York, no one, not the Skyline Airways staff, not their corporate executives, not their shareholders, had any idea of the power possessed by the Black woman with the Savannah accent who approached their premium customer counter. She was heading to New York to finalize a partnership deal with Skyline Airways, a deal worth hundreds of millions in annual bookings. Black Voyagers Collective would direct a significant portion of their business to Skyline in exchange for preferential rates, priority services, and collaborative marketing initiatives celebrating Black heritage destinations. The contract was drafted, the presentations prepared, the meeting with Skyline's executive team scheduled for the following morning. All Jasmine needed to do was board her flight. She checked her reflection one last time in her hotel mirror before heading to the airport. Her natural hair styled in a professional updo, her navy blue suit impeccably tailored, her posture straight and confident. She had played this game long enough to know the unwritten rules. In certain spaces, Black excellence had to be undeniable. "Just another day of being twice as good," she whispered to herself, a reminder of her mother's constant refrain throughout her childhood. She had no way of knowing that this routine business trip would catalyze a reckoning that would shake an entire industry to its core. The morning sun streamed through the soaring glass walls of LAX's Terminal 4 as Jasmine rolled her carry-on suitcase across the polished floor. She'd allowed plenty of time, a full 2 hours before her flight to New York, knowing that even first-class tickets and executive status didn't exempt Black travelers from the random additional screenings that somehow never seemed random. Sure enough, at the TSA checkpoint, Jasmine was pulled aside while several white business travelers sailed through. "Ma'am, we need to check your bag again," the agent said flatly. Jasmine maintained her pleasant expression, having long ago mastered the art of swallowing frustration. "Of course," she replied, stepping aside to the secondary screening area. The agent rifled through her meticulously packed luggage, disrupting her carefully organized documents for the Skyline presentation. Next came the enhanced pat-down and additional questions about her travel purpose. 15 minutes later, when she was finally cleared, Jasmine calmly repacked her belongings and proceeded to the Skyline Airways premium counter. She checked her watch. Still plenty of time, thankfully. The premium counter had 3 agents working but only one customer being served, a middle-aged white man in an expensive suit who was laughing comfortably with the agent helping him. Another agent, a blonde woman with a nameplate reading Beverly Holt, was typing at her computer with no customer. Jasmine approached Beverly's position with a warm smile. "Good morning." Beverly glanced up, then back at her computer, continuing to type without acknowledging Jasmine. After nearly 30 seconds of being ignored while standing directly in front of the counter, Jasmine spoke again. "Excuse me, I'd like to check in for my flight to New York, please." Beverly sighed audibly, as if Jasmine's presence was an unwelcome interruption. Boarding pass and ID, she said without making eye contact, extending her hand with palm up. Jasmine provided her digital boarding pass and driver's license. Beverly examined her ID with unusual scrutiny, looking between the photo and Jasmine's face multiple times. "Business or pleasure?" Beverly asked, her tone suggesting she already had assumptions about the answer. "Business," Jasmine replied pleasantly. "I have a meeting tomorrow morning." Beverly made a non-committal noise and continued typing. "Your flight boards at gate 42 in 90 minutes. "Thank you," Jasmine said. "I'd also like to use my executive points to request an upgrade if one's available." It was a simple request, one she'd made dozens of times before. What happened next would change everything. When Jasmine spoke, her Savannah accent naturally emerged, the gentle lilt that rounded her vowels and gave her speech its melodic quality. It was subtle, but unmistakably Southern, a connection to her roots that she'd never tried to erase despite years in corporate America. Beverly looked up with an exaggerated expression of confusion. Then, loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear, she said, "I don't speak ghetto. Can someone who speaks English help this woman?" The terminal seemed to freeze. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The white businessman who had been chatting amicably with the other agent turned to stare, his expression uncomfortable, but silent. Jasmine felt as if she'd been physically struck. Heat rushed to her face, but decades of navigating white spaces had trained her to control her visible reactions. Her voice remained steady, though slightly quieter. "Excuse me?" "I said I can't understand you," Beverly replied, now smirking. "Maybe try speaking proper English if you want service." With deliberate calmness, Jasmine reached for her phone in her purse and opened the camera app, setting it to record. Years of documenting discrimination had taught her the importance of evidence. "I'd like your employee ID number, please," Jasmine said, holding her phone visibly. Beverly's demeanor instantly changed. "Are you recording me? That's against company policy. You can't do that." "It's not against the law in California," Jasmine replied evenly. "And I'd still like your employee ID." "You're being aggressive now," Beverly said, her voice rising. "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside or I'll call security." "I'm standing perfectly still and speaking calmly," Jasmine noted, still recording. "I simply asked for your employee ID after you mocked my accent and used a racial slur to describe my speech." Around them, other passengers had begun taking out their own phones. The power dynamic was shifting, but Beverly didn't seem to notice. "Security!" Beverly called out. "We have an aggressive passenger." A young black security officer approached, taking in the scene, a composed black woman in business attire holding a phone, and an agitated white gate agent. His expression suggested he immediately understood the dynamics at play. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked, addressing both women neutrally. "This woman is harassing me and recording without permission," Beverly said. "And now she's causing a disturbance." The security officer turned to Jasmine. "Ma'am?" "I approached the counter to check in and request an upgrade using my executive points," Jasmine explained calmly. "When I spoke, this agent said, and I quote, 'I don't speak ghetto,' and asked for someone who speaks English to help me. I began recording after that comment and requested her employee ID." The officer's face remained professional, but his eyes conveyed understanding. He'd likely witnessed or experienced similar situations himself. "Do you have your boarding pass?" he asked Jasmine. She showed him her phone with the digital boarding pass, first-class ticket, and executive status clearly displayed. "I see," he said, turning back to Beverly. "Ms. Holt, is there a reason you can't assist this passenger with her upgrade request?" She was being difficult, Beverly insisted, though her confidence was clearly wavering as she realized others were watching and recording. "I didn't see any difficulty," said a woman in line behind Jasmine. "I heard what she said about ghetto, though." The security officer made a quick decision. "Ms. Holt, perhaps another agent can assist this passenger." He turned to Jasmine. "Ma'am, I apologize for the inconvenience. Let's move you to another agent." But the damage was done. The interaction had taken nearly 20 minutes. By the time, another agent processed Jasmine's request, apologizing profusely in hushed tones. The boarding for her flight had begun, and because of the additional security screening earlier, plus this incident, Jasmine missed her flight despite having arrived at the airport 2 hours early. As she stood watching her plane depart without her, Jasmine felt a cold resolve crystallize within her. She uploaded the video directly from the terminal while ordering an Uber back to her hotel. She hadn't built a near-billion-dollar business by accepting discrimination. Beverly Holt and Skyline Airways had no idea who they'd just humiliated, but they were about to find out. Have you ever witnessed a moment when years of silent suffering suddenly found a voice? When thousands of similar experiences crystallized around one perfect example of injustice? That's exactly what happened when Jasmine Williams uploaded her 90-second video from the LAX terminal. By the time her Uber reached her downtown Los Angeles hotel, the clip had already been viewed 30,000 times. By dinner, it had crossed 500,000. And by midnight, 3 million views and climbing exponentially. The internet had found its latest flashpoint in America's ongoing reckoning with racism, and Skyline Airways was squarely in the crosshairs. Did you all see how this black woman with a first-class ticket got treated at LAX? Tweeted one popular account with the video attached. But tell me again how racism isn't real in 2025. Another influential commentator shared the clip. Her crime? Having a southern accent while black. Watch white supremacy in corporate America work in real time. Hashtags multiplied and trended worldwide. Skyline racism. I don't speak ghetto. I speak ghetto. Proudly. Flying while black. The original video had captured everything perfectly. Beverly's dismissive body language, her clear enunciation of, I don't speak ghetto, the shocked faces of nearby passengers and Jasmine's composed response. There was no ambiguity, no room for alternative interpretations. It was textbook racism caught in high definition. As night fell in Los Angeles, celebrities and influencers began amplifying the video. A famous black actress with 60 million followers shared it with the caption, I've been bumped from flights, randomly searched and questioned about my first-class ticket my entire career. This happens every day. The only difference is, she got it on camera. Bikers Skyline Airways. Do better. Civil rights leaders issued statements. Black travel groups shared their own similar experiences with the airline. Current and former Skyline employees began coming forward with stories about the company's internal culture. This is not an isolated incident, wrote one former flight attendant. Skyline has a pattern of ignoring complaints about racial bias from both customers and staff. At 9:47 p.m. Pacific Time, Skyline Airways finally responded with a statement, posted to their social media accounts. Skyline Airways is aware of a customer service incident at LAX today that doesn't reflect our company values. The employee has been placed on administrative leave while we investigate. We apologize for any misunderstanding and remain committed to serving all our passengers with respect. The statement only fueled the fire. The comment section exploded. Misunderstanding. She said, I don't speak ghetto. What's to misunderstand? Notice how they can't even say the word racism in their apology. Administrative leave. Paid vacation until this blows over. Meanwhile, journalists were digging. By morning, 3 separate passengers had come forward with previous complaints about Beverly Holt, all involving interactions with passengers of color. According to internal sources, these complaints had been filed but never addressed by management. A tech reporter discovered that Beverly's personal social media accounts contained several questionable posts about immigrants and minorities, somehow overlooked by Skyline's HR department. The story jumped from social media to mainstream news outlets. Morning shows ran segments featuring the clip. Cable news panels debated the implications. Business publications analyzed the potential impact on Skyline's brand and stock value. Skyline's CEO, Raymond Wilson, a 60-year-old white man who had risen through the ranks over 30 years with the company, agreed to a live interview with a major network, a decision his PR team would immediately regret. Look, we take customer service very seriously, Wilson said, looking uncomfortable in front of the cameras. What happened was unfortunate and doesn't reflect our company values. But Mr. Wilson, the interviewer pressed, The employee specifically used a racial stereotype saying, "I don't speak ghetto." How is Skyline addressing the clearly racial component of this incident? Wilson shifted in his seat. We're investigating all aspects of the interaction. Skyline serves millions of diverse customers each year without incident. This appears to be an isolated case. Yet we've uncovered at least 3 previous complaints about this same employee, all from passengers of color, that were never addressed. Is there a systemic issue at Skyline? I wouldn't say that, Wilson replied, his discomfort visible. We have diversity training programs in place. Our workforce includes people from many backgrounds. The interview continued its downward spiral, with Wilson refusing to acknowledge the explicit racism captured in the video, instead retreating to corporate jargon about reviewing policies and recommitting to service excellence. The damage was done. Wilson had failed the most basic test of leadership, acknowledging obvious wrongdoing directly and taking immediate responsibility. Through it all, Jasmine Williams maintained her silence publicly. She issued no statements, gave no interviews, made no further social media posts. The video spoke for itself. Back in her hotel room, she watched the story unfold with a calculating eye. This wasn't just a personal humiliation anymore. It was a leverage point, a rare moment when public attention aligned perfectly with long overdue accountability. Jasmine had built her career understanding systems and how to change them. She recognized both the trauma of what had happened and the strategic opportunity it presented. This could be a momentary viral story that faded within days, or it could become a catalyst for actual structural change. The difference would come down to what she did next. She began making calls to her network, not to the press, not to activists, but to the 50 most influential agency owners within Black Voyagers Collective. She arranged an emergency virtual meeting for 8 a.m. the next morning. Don't comment publicly yet, she instructed each person. I have a plan. As midnight approached, Jasmine reviewed the presentation she'd prepared for her now canceled meeting with Skyline executives. The slides showcased Black Voyagers Collective's impressive booking numbers with the airline, $115 million annually, and projected to grow to $200 million with the new partnership, numbers that Skyline Airways was counting on, numbers they had no idea were now in jeopardy. Jasmine closed her laptop and finally allowed herself a moment to process the day's events. The humiliation, the familiar sting of being reminded that, no matter her accomplishments, some would only ever see her skin color and judge her for it. But tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow she would remind herself in the world of exactly who she was and the power she wielded. What do you think would be the most effective response to such blatant discrimination? Comment number 1 if you believe public pressure and social media are enough to create real change. Or number 2, if you think economic consequences are the only language corporations truly understand. Like and subscribe if you want to see how Jasmine uses her hidden power to transform an entire industry overnight. What would you do if you secretly controlled $950 million in business that a company took for granted? At precisely 8:00 a.m. Pacific Time, Jasmine Williams appeared on the screens of 50 Black business owners across America. These weren't just any entrepreneurs. They were the top agency owners within Black Voyagers Collective, representing the consortium's largest booking volumes and most influential voices. From her hotel suite, Jasmine looked composed and resolute despite having slept barely 3 hours. She wore a structured burgundy blazer, her natural hair framing her face, in a halo of tight coils. No trace of the previous day's humiliation showed on her features, only determination. Thank you all for joining on such short notice, she began. By now I'm sure you've seen the video. Nods and grave expressions filled the grid of faces on her screen. What happened to me yesterday is nothing new. It's what our parents experienced, what we experience, and sadly what our children still experience. The only difference is that this time we have it on video. And this time, we have the power to do something about it. She shared her screen, revealing a meticulously prepared presentation. The first slide displayed a simple number, 953,582,405. That's the total annual booking value of Black Voyagers Collective across all 312 agencies in our network, Jasmine explained. nearly $1 billion in travel spending that we direct to airlines, hotels, cruise lines, and tour operators of our choosing. She clicked to the next slide, which broke down their airline expenditure by carrier. Skyline Airways receives $115 million from our collective annually. That represents roughly 4% of their domestic revenue. Significant, but not their largest client. Another click revealed the next slide. Partnership expansion proposal. Projected $200 million annual bookings by 2027. This is what I was traveling to New York to present. A partnership that would have nearly doubled our business with Skyline over the next 2 years. The faces on screen registered shock as they connected the dots. To be clear, Jasmine continued, Skyline Airways has no idea that the woman their gate agent humiliated yesterday is the CEO of a consortium controlling nearly $1 billion in travel revenue. They have no idea that the ghetto accent they mocked belongs to the person who was about to direct an additional $85 million in annual bookings their way. Dwayne Jackson, owner of Atlanta's largest Black-focused travel agency, spoke up. So what are you proposing, Jasmine? I'm proposing we show them exactly who we are and what we're worth. Her voice was calm but carried unmistakable resolve. I'm proposing that effective immediately, all 300-plus agencies in our network cease booking with Skyline Airways. Completely, not a single ticket. And we quietly redirect that $115 million to their competitors. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of her proposal. Finally, Tamara Washington from Chicago spoke. That's a major move, Jasmine. It could affect our bottom lines too. Some routes, Skyline offers the best options for our clients. Jasmine nodded. I understand the sacrifice I'm asking for. This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability and creating actual change. For too long, companies have gotten away with performative apologies while continuing the same discriminatory practices. They issue statements, promise training, maybe fire one employee, and nothing fundamentally changes. She displayed the next slide, a comprehensive analysis of alternative carriers that could absorb their Skyline bookings with comparable routes and pricing. I've run the numbers. Yes, there will be some short-term disruption and potentially slightly lower commissions for about 3 months. I'm prepared to have the consortium absorb those differences to keep everyone whole. More agency owners began unmuting to voice support. I'm in, said James Thompson from Detroit. My daughter had a similar experience with them last year. Nothing came of our complaint. Count Phoenix with you, added Layla Barker. We've had issues with Skyline for years. One by one, the agency owners expressed solidarity. Within 20 minutes, all 50 had agreed to Jasmine's plan despite the financial risk. Thank you, Jasmine said, visibly moved by their unity. Starting today, we implement a complete booking freeze with Skyline. No announcements, no public statements yet. We just quietly stop sending them business and wait for them to notice. She outlined the technical implementation, how their shared booking system would be updated to remove Skyline as a preferred carrier, suggested scripts for agents to use when recommending alternatives to clients, and contingency plans for existing bookings. What about the video? Asked Omar Phillips from Philadelphia. You've been silent publicly. Are you planning to speak out? Not yet, Jasmine replied. The video speaks for itself, and I want Skyline to feel the economic impact before they even connect it to me. Let them puzzle over why their bookings are suddenly dropping before they realize who they're really dealing with. After the meeting concluded, Jasmine opened her email and composed a brief professional message to Skyline Airways partnership team. Due to unforeseen circumstances, I need to cancel our meeting scheduled for tomorrow in New York. I'll have my team reach out to reschedule at a later date. Regards, Jasmine Williams, CEO, Black Voyagers Collective. No explanation, no reference to the incident. Just a simple cancellation that gave no indication of the economic earthquake she had just set in motion. Meanwhile, Skyline's crisis management team was spiraling deeper into a self-created disaster. Their tepid initial response had only intensified public outrage. Internal emails obtained by journalists revealed executives discussing how to make this go away without costly diversity initiatives. One particularly damaging email from Skyline's VP of Operations read, Let's just wait for the next news cycle. These things blow over if we don't add fuel by overreacting. We can't let Twitter dictate company policy. Beverly Holt remained on administrative leave rather than being terminated, despite the clear evidence and growing list of previous complaints against her. The company's statement referred to an ongoing investigation that seemed designed to delay actual accountability. What Skyline failed to understand was that while they were playing their usual crisis management game, an invisible economic vice had begun tightening around them. In travel agency computers across America, a subtle but seismic shift was occurring as hundreds of agents who specifically served Black travelers began booking their clients on any airline but Skyline. By the end of that day, as Jasmine monitored the situation from her hotel room, she received confirmation that their plan was already operational. All 50 top agencies had implemented the Skyline freeze, and the remaining agencies would follow within 24 hours. She opened her hotel room curtains and looked out at the Los Angeles skyline, feeling a complex mix of emotions. The personal wound of yesterday's humiliation was still raw, but there was also a sense of purpose, of standing at a moment when real change might actually be possible. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother back in Savannah. "Baby, I saw what happened. You okay?" Jasmine replied, "I'm okay, Mama, and I think something good might come from this." Her mother's response came quickly. "Make them remember your name." Jasmine smiled. After a lifetime of being underestimated, ignored, and discriminated against, she was about to teach Skyline Airways and corporate America an unforgettable lesson about the true cost of racism, and they wouldn't even see it coming until it was too late. 3 days after the incident at LAX, confusion reigned in Skyline Airways corporate headquarters in Dallas. The modern glass and steel building that normally hummed with the confident energy of a major airline now crackled with tension and bewilderment. In the analytics department on the 11th floor, data scientist Rachel Chen stared at her screen with growing alarm. She'd been monitoring booking patterns since the viral video emerged, expecting some impact, but nothing like what she was seeing. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered, refreshing the dashboard. The numbers remained stubbornly, disturbingly low. Rachel picked up her phone and dialed her supervisor. "Mark, I think there's something wrong with our tracking system. The new booking numbers for the past 48 hours are way off." 20 minutes later, an emergency meeting convened in a glass-walled conference room. Rachel projected her findings onto the large screen as increasingly anxious executives filed in. "Overall, new bookings are down 27% compared to the same period last week," she explained, pointing to a dramatically plunging graph. "Cancellations are up 32%. "It's the video fallout," suggested the VP of marketing, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "Bad press always affects bookings temporarily." Rachel shook her head. "I thought so too, but I've compared this to previous PR crises. This is different. The pattern doesn't match typical consumer backlash." She clicked to the next slide, showing a detailed breakdown. The decline isn't evenly distributed across all booking channels. Direct consumer bookings through our website and app are only down about 8%, within expected range for negative publicity. Her finger traced another line on the graph that dropped precipitously. "But bookings through travel agencies have fallen off a cliff, down 68%. That's unprecedented." The CFO leaned forward, his forehead creased with concern. "Which agencies specifically?" "That's what's strange," Rachel replied. "It's not the major corporate travel management companies or the big online agencies. It's hundreds of smaller independent agencies across the country that have just stopped booking with us. Completely. Like someone flipped a switch. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "Could it be a technical issue?" asked the CIO. "Maybe an API problem or a glitch in our agency portal?" The head of the agency relations team shook his head. "We've checked the systems. Everything's functioning normally. They're just not booking with us." The CEO, Howard Patterson, who had replaced the retired Raymond Wilson just 6 months earlier, spoke for the first time. "Have we reached out to any of these agencies directly?" "We've tried," replied the agency relations director. Most aren't taking our calls. The few that did were polite but vague, saying they're exploring other carrier options or diversifying. Their airline partnerships. Patterson's jaw tightened. This isn't random. There's a pattern we're missing. Tyrone Davis, a junior analyst who had been quietly listening from the corner of the room, cleared his throat. As one of the few black employees in Skyline's corporate headquarters, he often found himself hesitating to speak up. But the disconnect he was witnessing between his white colleagues' confusion and what seemed obvious to him had become too glaring to ignore. "Sir," he said, addressing the CEO, "I think I might know what's happening." All heads turned toward him, many seeming to notice his presence for the first time. "The agencies that have stopped booking with us, I've cross-referenced them with some industry directories. A significant percentage appear to be black-owned agencies, or those serving predominantly black clientele." Rachel quickly pulled up additional data on her laptop, eyes widening. "He's right. There's almost a 100% overlap." The marketing VP scoffed. "That can't possibly account for such a large drop in revenue. These must be tiny operations." Tyrone remained calm. "Actually, sir, the black travel market represents about $109 billion in annual spending. Black Americans spend a higher percentage of their income on travel than any other demographic group. These agencies might be individually small, but collectively, they're powerful." The CFO was already calculating on his tablet. "If this continues for a month, we're looking at a revenue hit of at least $20 million. 3 months, closer to $60 million. This has to be related to the LAX incident," the HR director stated the increasingly obvious. Patterson's expression darkened. "So we're facing a coordinated boycott? From hundreds of independent agencies? Simultaneously? That would require organization, leadership. Maybe they're connected somehow," suggested Rachel. "A network or association." The room fell into troubled silence again, broken when the CEO's assistant hurried in with a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this. Our stock has dropped 18% since market opening." Patterson took the tablet, face grim as he read the financial news headline. "Skyline Airways stock plummets amid mysterious booking collapse following racial incident. Find out who's behind this," Patterson ordered. "I want to know every agency that stopped booking with us, who owns them, and how they're connected. And someone get me everything we have on that passenger from the video." 3 floors below, Skyline's HR department was frantically searching their systems for the woman's name from the LAX incident report. Beverly Holt had identified her only as an aggressive passenger in her version of events, and no one had bothered to record her name properly. Finally, a junior HR staff member found the information in the Executive Loyalty Program database. "Jasmine Williams," she read aloud, "CEO of something called Black Voyagers Collective." Within minutes, the information reached Patterson, who immediately conducted a web search on his phone. His face drained of color as he read the description from their website. Black Voyagers Collective, America's largest consortium of black-owned travel agencies, representing over 300 independent businesses and nearly $1 billion in annual travel expenditure. "Find out how much business they do with us," he ordered, his voice tight with realization. "And get Jasmine Williams on the phone. Now." By late afternoon, Skyline's executive team had pieced together the devastating truth. They had not simply mistreated an ordinary passenger. They had humiliated the head of a nearly billion-dollar travel consortium that controlled over $115 million in annual bookings with their airline. A consortium that had, overnight and without announcement, directed all that business to their competitors. The stock continued its free fall, closing down 27% for the day. Financial analysts were baffled by the sudden collapse in Skyline's bookings and investor confidence. Meanwhile, all attempts to reach Jasmine Williams proved futile. Her office politely informed callers that Ms. Williams was unavailable and not currently scheduling meetings with Skyline representatives. In a desperate move, Patterson released another public statement, this one finally acknowledging the unacceptable racial bias in the incident and announcing Beverly Holt's termination, effective immediately. The statement promised a thorough review of customer service practices and enhanced diversity training. But it was too little, too late. the invisible economic stranglehold tightened. By day's end, Skyline's booking systems showed a 79% reduction in travel agency bookings nationwide. In her Los Angeles hotel room, Jasmine watched the airline's stock price tumble with grim satisfaction. She had spent a lifetime being underestimated by companies like Skyline, corporations that viewed diversity as a marketing slogan rather than a fundamental value, that treated Black customers as an afterthought, that allowed employees like Beverly Holt to discriminate without consequence. Her phone had been ringing constantly with calls from Skyline executives that she deliberately let go to voicemail. The time for conversation would come, but not yet. First, they needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with and what real accountability might cost them. As evening fell, Jasmine received confirmation that all 312 agencies in her network had successfully implemented the Skyline freeze. Not a single ticket had been booked with the airline through their consortium that day. She sent a simple message to her leadership team. Phase 1 complete. Hold the line. What happens when a single incident of discrimination captures the perfect storm of timing, visibility, and economic leverage? When years of similar experiences finally crystallize around one irrefutable example. When those who have long suffered in silence suddenly realize their collective power. The answer unfolded dramatically in the days following the LAX incident, as what began as one woman's humiliation transformed into a national conversation about how Black customers are treated across American industries. The movement that grew around Jasmine Williams' 90-second video transcended the original incident, tapping into a reservoir of shared experiences and pent-up demand for accountability. While Skyline Airways stock continued its precipitous decline, now down 42%, the impact spread far beyond a single company. By the 5th day after the incident, influential Black business networks beyond the travel industry began reaching out to Jasmine, offering solidarity and coordination. The National Association of Black Accountants announced they would review their corporate travel policies. The Black Chambers of Commerce in 12 major cities encouraged member businesses to reconsider relationships with Skyline and its partner companies. Black celebrities with endorsement deals connected to Skyline or its parent company publicly terminated their contracts. A prominent Black film director pulled his production company's advertising from Skyline's in-flight entertainment system. Black influencers across platforms from YouTube to Instagram launched the Fly Anything But Skyline Challenge, documenting themselves choosing competitor airlines. The hashtag #WhatWeFace took over social media as Black professionals shared their own workplace discrimination stories, creating a devastating mosaic of similar experiences across industries, positions, and geographic locations. I've been asked if my medical degree is real by patients refusing my care. What we face. Security follows me around department stores while white shoplifters walk out with merchandise. What we face. My white colleague was promoted after I trained him. I've been not quite ready for 5 years. What we face. I straighten my hair for job interviews because I know what happens when I don't. What we face. The collective testimony was powerful precisely because it was so ordinary. These weren't unusual horror stories, but daily indignities familiar to millions. Until now, Jasmine had maintained her public silence, letting the video and the economic impact speak for themselves. But as the movement grew, she recognized the need for clear leadership and context. After careful consideration, she agreed to a single interview with a respected Black journalist whose work focused on the intersection of race and economics. The resulting conversation, broadcast on the 6th evening after the incident, was immediately hailed as a watershed moment in discussions of corporate accountability for racism. Seated in a simple chair against a neutral background, Jasmine appeared composed and resolute in a tailored emerald suit, her natural hair framing her face. "I want to be clear about something," she said early in the interview. "This isn't about one incident or one airline. This isn't about one employee saying something offensive. This is about systems that allow discrimination to flourish without consequence." The interviewer nodded. "Yet your response has been uniquely effective. Can you talk about the economic strategy you employed?" "Black Americans control over $1 trillion in annual spending power," Jasmine explained. For generations, we've been told that our only power is protest, marching, boycotting as individuals, raising awareness. Those tools remain vital. But we've overlooked our tremendous economic leverage. She leaned forward slightly. The travel industry alone sees over $100 billion annually from Black travelers. Yet we're consistently treated as afterthoughts, subjected to extra scrutiny, seated near restrooms, pulled aside for random screening, questioned about our first-class tickets. And you had already organized this economic power through your consortium. Black Voyagers Collective represents nearly $1 billion in annual travel bookings, Jasmine confirmed. We built this network over 15 years, connecting hundreds of Black-owned travel agencies nationwide. We've always used our collective purchasing power to negotiate better rates and services. Now we're using it to demand dignity and respect. Skyline Airways stock has fallen over 40%. Their booking numbers are reportedly catastrophic. Was financial damage your goal? Jasmine shook her head. The goal is meaningful, lasting change. Not performative apologies or symbolic gestures. Not one-day diversity training that changes nothing. We want structural transformation in how companies like Skyline operate, from hiring practices to how complaints are handled to executive representation. Some critics say your approach is too aggressive, that it's punishing thousands of Skyline employees for one person's actions. Those critics misunderstand what happened, Jasmine replied calmly. Beverly Holt said those words, yes. But Skyline Airways created a culture where she felt comfortable saying them. They ignored previous complaints about her. Their initial response couldn't even acknowledge the racism involved. Their CEO went on national television and called it an unfortunate customer service incident. She continued, true accountability isn't just firing one employee after public pressure. It's examining and changing the systems that protected her behavior for years. And sometimes, unfortunately, financial consequences are the only language corporations truly understand. The interview continued for nearly an hour, with Jasmine articulating a vision that resonated far beyond the specific incident. By morning, clips had been viewed tens of millions of times, and Jasmine Williams had emerged as a powerful new voice in America's ongoing conversation about race and corporate responsibility. Meanwhile, Skyline's competitors recognized the opportunity unfolding before them. 3 major airlines announced new diversity initiatives within days. 2 reached out directly to Black Voyagers Collective with partnership proposals that included specific commitments to anti-racism training, diverse hiring targets, and improved complaint procedures. Beverly Holt, the gate agent whose words had sparked the firestorm, made the catastrophic decision to accept an interview request from a conservative commentator. Her appearance did nothing to help Skyline's cause. I'm being canceled for something everyone's thinking, she claimed, visibly emotional. I don't have a racist bone in my body. Some people are just too sensitive these days. When asked if she would apologize to Jasmine specifically, Beverly bristled. For what? Doing my job? Maybe if people want to be understood, they should learn to speak properly. The interview was a disaster that only further damaged Skyline's already tattered reputation. For Jasmine, the public spotlight brought mixed consequences. Her inbox filled with thousands of messages, many supportive but others containing threats, racial slurs, and vicious personal attacks. Security consultants advised additional precautions for her home and office. Conservative media outlets began running segments questioning her motives and business practices. In private moments, alone in her hotel room, or on the secure line with her mother, Jasmine allowed herself to feel the emotional weight of it all. The humiliation she'd experienced at LAX. The painful memories it had triggered of similar moments throughout her life. The pressure of suddenly becoming the face of a movement. The responsibility of wielding economic power that affected thousands of livelihoods. You sure you're okay, baby? Her mother asked during their nightly call. Some days are harder than others, Jasmine admitted. I never wanted to be front and center like this. I just wanted to build my business. You were ready for this moment, even if you didn't choose it, her mother replied. All those times they underestimated you, all those rooms where they ignored your raised hand. You were preparing for now. Jasmine smiled, drawing strength from her mother's unwavering faith in her. "I just want to make sure something real comes from this, something that lasts." "It will," her mother assured her, "because you won't settle for anything less." As the 7th day after the incident dawned, Skyline Airways stock had fallen a staggering 47%. Financial analysts were issuing serious concerns about the company's viability if the situation continued. And the board of directors called an emergency meeting to discuss the company's very survival. Have you ever been in a situation where you had more influence than others realized? Comment number 1. If you've ever had to use your hidden power to create positive change. Or number 2, if you believe economic pressure is the most effective way to transform corporate behavior. Like and subscribe to see how Skyline Airways responds to this existential crisis. With their stock in freefall and bookings evaporating, will they finally understand what real accountability looks like? The 23rd floor executive boardroom of Skyline Airways' Dallas headquarters had never seen a Sunday emergency meeting in the company's 40-year history. Yet here they were, 14 grim-faced board members gathered around the polished, mahogany table, staring at financial projections that looked more like a corporate obituary than a forecast. If this continues another 2 weeks, we'll need to begin preparations for Chapter 11, the CFO concluded, clicking to his final slide. Our cash reserves are substantial, but the rate of decline is simply unsustainable. Howard Patterson, the CEO, loosened his tie slightly. 8 days into the crisis, he had aged visibly, his eyes shadowed, his normally confident demeanor replaced by tense exhaustion. "It's not just the booking freeze from Black Voyagers Collective anymore," he said. "It's spreading. Corporate accounts are pausing their contracts. Universities are implementing travel policies excluding us. The viral aspect has taken on a life of its own." Francine Michaels, one of the board's longest-serving members, removed her glasses. "Then we need to take dramatic action. Immediately. This is no longer about public relations. It's about survival." "We've tried everything in the crisis management playbook," Patterson countered. "We fired Beverly Holt. We've issued increasingly stronger apologies. We've announced diversity training initiatives. Nothing's working." "Because none of that addresses the real issue," said a voice from the doorway. All heads turned to see Denise Robinson, Skyline's chief marketing officer, and until this moment, the highest-ranking Black executive at the company. She hadn't been invited to the emergency board meeting but had apparently decided that was an oversight she wouldn't tolerate. "The real issue," Denise continued, walking confidently to the table, "is that everything we've done has been reactive, superficial, and focused on protecting Skyline rather than acknowledging the harm done and making fundamental changes." Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Others looked annoyed at the interruption, but Francine Michaels nodded slowly. "Go on, Denise. What would you recommend?" Denise placed her tablet on the table. "First, the CEO needs to resign." Patterson's face flushed. "Now wait just a minute. Your response to this crisis has been textbook corporate damage control, Howard." Denise cut him off. "You treated it as a PR problem rather than a moral failing and systemic issue. Your television interview made things exponentially worse. Your leadership is now inextricably linked to this failure." Before Patterson could respond, Francine spoke again. "She's right. The market has lost confidence in your leadership, Howard. We need a clean break." The room erupted in tense discussion, but the outcome was inevitable. By midday, Howard Patterson had submitted his resignation, effective immediately. The board unanimously appointed Denise Robinson as interim CEO, the first Black woman to lead a major American airline. Her first official act was to reach out personally to Jasmine Williams. "Ms. Williams, this is Denise Robinson, newly appointed interim CEO of Skyline Airways," she said when Jasmine finally accepted her call. "I believe we need to meet, in person, as soon as possible." There was a pause before Jasmine responded. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone," Denise insisted. "What I'm proposing requires a face-to-face conversation. I can come to you wherever you are." 24 hours later, Denise arrived at Jasmine's office in Atlanta, accompanied only by Skyline's general counsel. Jasmine had assembled her entire executive team, 6 black women and men who had helped build Black Voyagers Collective from the ground up. The contrast between this meeting and what would have occurred with the previous Skyline leadership was immediately apparent. Denise didn't attempt to minimize what had happened or deflect responsibility. What Beverly Holt did was inexcusable, she began. But more inexcusable was our company's failure to address similar complaints in the past, our inadequate initial response, and our attempt to treat racism as a customer service mishap. For all of that, I offer my sincere apology, not as a PR statement, but as the starting point for real change. Jasmine maintained her composed, evaluative expression. I appreciate your directness, Ms. Robinson, but apologies without action mean nothing at this point. I agree completely, Denise replied. That's why I'm here with concrete proposals. She outlined a series of immediate changes: termination of 2 executives who had tried to downplay the incident, a complete overhaul of the customer complaint system with direct oversight from the CEO's office for any discrimination allegations, and mandatory anti-racism training for all customer-facing staff within 30 days. Jasmine listened without interruption, then leaned forward. Those are good first steps, but they don't address the underlying structural issues. We need to see fundamental transformation, not just crisis management. Then she presented her own list of demands: mandatory company-wide anti-racism training developed and led by respected Black educators, specific hiring targets for Black employees at all levels, including executive positions, a $50 million investment in programs supporting Black tourism and travel education, complete transparency in addressing discrimination complaints, and regular independent audits of Skyline's progress. Skyline's general counsel visibly blanched at the scope and cost of these demands. Ms. Williams, while we appreciate your position, some of these requests present significant financial and logistical challenges. So does bankruptcy, Jasmine interrupted calmly. Which is where Skyline is headed if this situation continues. Your stock has fallen 47%. Your bookings are down nearly 60%. The choice isn't between doing these things or not. It's between making fundamental changes or watching your company collapse. She let that reality sink in before continuing. This isn't extortion, it's accountability. Black Voyagers Collective represents nearly $1 billion in annual travel bookings. We've directed that business to airlines that treat our clients with respect and dignity. We're prepared to resume our relationship with Skyline, but only when we see genuine commitment to change. The meeting continued for hours, with detailed negotiations on each point. As afternoon turned to evening, Jasmine sensed that Denise genuinely wanted transformative change, but was getting pushback from Skyline's board on the costs involved. $50 million for Black tourism initiatives is simply not feasible given our current financial situation, the general counsel insisted. Jasmine didn't budge. That number represents less than half of what you earned annually from our consortium alone. Consider it an investment in restoring your reputation and securing future business, not a penalty. As the negotiations reached their 10th hour, memories surfaced for Jasmine. Times earlier in her career when she'd faced discrimination from airlines and had no recourse, no power to demand better treatment. The Black female flight attendant who'd been reprimanded for wearing her natural hair. The countless random security screenings she'd endured. The suspicious glances when she presented first-class boarding passes. This wasn't just about one incident at LAX. It was about changing systems that had marginalized Black travelers for generations. Near midnight, they seemed close to agreement on most points, but Skyline's representatives still balked at the full financial commitment and timeline Jasmine demanded. We need time to implement these changes, Denise explained. And the board is concerned about the precedent this sets. They're worried other groups will make similar demands. If other marginalized groups demand to be treated with dignity and respect, that should be welcomed, not feared, Jasmine replied. As for time, you've had decades. The timeline I've proposed is already generous. When it became clear that Skyline was trying to negotiate down the substantive elements rather than commit to real change, Jasmine made a decision. She stood up, signaling to her team. Thank you for coming, Ms. Robinson. I think we've gone as far as we can today. We're still negotiating, Denise protested. We can work through these sticking points. What I'm hearing is that Skyline wants the appearance of change without the full commitment it requires, Jasmine said. That's exactly the problem that brought us here. When your board is ready to discuss actual transformation rather than damage, control, you know how to reach me. With that, Jasmine and her team exited, leaving Skyline's representatives stunned by the abrupt end to negotiations they had believed were progressing. As they walked out of the building, Anthony Chen, Black Voyagers Collective's chief financial officer, whispered to Jasmine, "Was that the right move? They were offering significant concessions. They were offering what they thought was the minimum to make this go away," Jasmine replied. "They need to understand this isn't a negotiating tactic. These changes are non-negotiable requirements for doing business with our community." Back at Skyline's headquarters, Denise Robinson faced a difficult call with the board, explaining that negotiations had broken down. "She walked away?" the chairman asked incredulously. "After all we offered?" "She recognized that we were trying to water down the commitments," Denise replied frankly. "And she's right. We're still thinking about this as a PR crisis to manage rather than a fundamental failure requiring transformation. The demands are simply too expensive," another board member argued. "We can't commit $50 million while our stock is in freefall." Denise took a deep breath. "Then prepare for bankruptcy, because without a resolution, that's where we're headed. And soon." The board fell silent, finally confronting the existential choice before them. Accept Jasmine's terms, or risk losing everything. By day 12 of the crisis, Skyline Airways stood at a precipice. Their stock had fallen 53% from pre-incident levels. Financial analysts had downgraded their rating to sell. Competitors were aggressively moving to capture their market share, with 2 airlines already announcing expanded routes on Skyline's most profitable corridors. Inside Skyline's headquarters, the pressure had reached a breaking point. Shareholders were demanding immediate action. The board remained divided on how to respond to Jasmine Williams' non-negotiable terms. "We should wait it out," argued Walter Hoffman, one of the more conservative board members. "These social media storms always blow over eventually. If we commit to these expensive initiatives, we're setting a dangerous precedent." Denise Robinson, the interim CEO, had been listening to similar arguments for days. Her patience had worn thin. "This isn't a social media storm," she countered, her voice steel-edged with restraint. "This is a fundamental reckoning with how we've done business. Our stock has lost over half its value. Bookings are down nearly 60%. 3 major corporate accounts suspended their contracts this morning. We are bleeding millions daily, while this board debates whether treating Black customers with dignity is too expensive." The boardroom fell silent. Denise continued, "I've been with this company 15 years. I've watched us ignore complaints about racial bias from both customers and employees. I've sat in meetings where diversity initiatives were the first budget items cut. I've been the only Black voice in rooms where decisions affecting millions of diverse customers were made without consideration." She placed both hands on the table and leaned forward. "This isn't about public relations anymore. It's about whether Skyline Airways deserves to survive." Meanwhile, across the country, support for Black Voyagers Collective continued to grow. Travel groups representing Hispanic, Asian American, and LGBTQ+ communities issued statements of solidarity. The National Disability Travel Alliance announced they too had documented years of inadequate accommodation and discriminatory treatment by Skyline, and would join the booking freeze if substantive changes weren't implemented. The narrative had expanded beyond one incident to become a nationwide conversation about corporate accountability to marginalized communities. For Jasmine, the pressure was mounting from another direction. As the boycott continued, she received messages from Skyline employees worried about their jobs: flight attendants, ground crew, mechanics, many of them people of color themselves who supported the cause but feared becoming collateral damage. "Am I pushing too hard?" she asked during a late-night call with her mother. "What if this forces layoffs that hurt the very communities we're trying to help?" Her mother didn't hesitate. "Baby, change never comes easy. People said the same things during the Montgomery bus boycott, that it was hurting black bus drivers. But sometimes systems only change when they're forced to. I know, Jasmine sighed, but that doesn't make the weight any lighter. It's not supposed to be light, her mother replied gently. That's how you know it matters. The conversation strengthened Jasmine's resolve. The next morning, she issued her first public statement since her televised interview. This is not about punishing Skyline Airways or its employees. This is about creating lasting change in how corporations treat black customers and address racism within their ranks. We remain open to resuming our business relationship with Skyline when they commit fully to the structural changes required. Not symbolic gestures, not half measures, real, measurable transformation. The statement increased pressure on Skyline's board, making it clear that there would be no easy compromise or face-saving partial agreement. After nearly 14 hours of contentious debate, Skyline's board finally reached its decision. At 11:47 p.m. on the 13th day of the crisis, they voted 8-5 to accept all of Jasmine Williams's terms without modification. By morning, Skyline Airways announced the most comprehensive anti-racism initiative in airline industry history. A $50 million investment in programs supporting black tourism, travel education, and career development. Specific hiring targets for black employees at all levels, including executive positions and board membership. Mandatory anti-racism training for all employees, developed and led by respected black educators. Complete overhaul of discrimination complaint procedures with direct oversight from a newly created Chief Inclusion Officer position. Regular independent audits of the company's progress, with results made public. Financial consequences for executives if diversity and inclusion metrics weren't met. The announcement sent shockwaves through the industry. Other airlines scrambled to assess their own vulnerabilities and practices. Corporate America watched closely, recognizing that a new standard for accountability had been established. As part of the announcement, Skyline's board offered Jasmine Williams a seat as a director, a position that would give her direct influence over the company's future direction. Her initial response surprised many. She declined. "I'm not interested in being a token appointment," she explained to Denise Robinson. "If Skyline is serious about transformation, prove it first. Implement these changes. Show measurable results. Then we can discuss board representation." Denise understood. "That's fair, but I hope you'll reconsider in the future. We need your perspective permanently at the table, not just during a crisis." The conversation ended with a tentative agreement. Black Voyagers Collective would gradually resume bookings with Skyline over a 3-month period, contingent on visible progress implementing the agreed changes. As news of the agreement spread, both Jasmine and Skyline received mixed reactions. Many celebrated the outcome as a landmark victory for corporate accountability. Others criticized what they saw as capitulation to pressure. In a particularly poignant moment, Jasmine received a handwritten letter from the young black security officer who had witnessed the original incident at LAX. "What you did matters," he wrote. "I've worked at that airport for 7 years and seen countless incidents like yours that went nowhere. For the first time, I believe change might actually be possible." That evening, as Jasmine sat alone in her Atlanta office reviewing the finalized agreement with Skyline, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a hotel maid's daughter in Savannah to a power broker who had just transformed an industry. From a woman humiliated for her accent to a leader whose voice had catalyzed a national movement. The victory wasn't perfect. No single action could erase generations of systemic discrimination. But it was a meaningful start. Proof that economic power, strategically applied, could create change where decades of polite requests had failed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Implementing the agreement, maintaining pressure to ensure compliance, managing the heightened public profile she'd never sought but now carried. But tonight, Jasmine allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The system had bent, just a little, toward justice. And perhaps most importantly, somewhere a young black girl might look at what had happened and understand that her voice, her dignity and her power mattered. That she didn't have to accept being told she spoke ghetto or being made to feel small because of who she was. That realization, Jasmine thought, was worth everything. 1 year later, Jasmine Williams stood in the gleaming lobby of Skyline Airways headquarters, surrounded by journalists and executives for a very different kind of meeting than her last visit. Today, she was accepting a position on the company's board of directors after declining the initial offer 12 months earlier. "I said I'd join when I saw genuine commitment to change," she explained to reporters. "Over the past year, Skyline has exceeded our expectations in implementing every aspect of our agreement. This isn't about symbolic representation anymore. It's about continuing the substantive transformation already underway." The changes at Skyline had indeed been remarkable. Under Denise Robinson, who had been confirmed as permanent CEO, the company had implemented all promised initiatives and now led the industry in diversity metrics and customer satisfaction among minority travelers. The statistics told part of the story. Black executive representation had increased from 3% to 17%. Customer complaints about racial bias had decreased by 78%. The $50 million investment fund had already supported 27 Black-owned tourism businesses and provided travel scholarships to over 300 students from underrepresented communities. But the numbers couldn't capture the cultural shift within the company. Skyline had transformed from a corporation that viewed diversity as a compliance issue to one that recognized it as a competitive advantage. "We're a better airline today than we were a year ago," Denise acknowledged in her introduction of Jasmine. "Not despite these changes, but because of them. Our customer service ratings have improved across all demographics. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high. We've recovered our stock value, and then some." Indeed, Skyline's share price had not only rebounded but now traded 15% above its pre-incident level, reflecting the market's confidence in the company's new direction. As Jasmine prepared to sign the official board membership documents, she reflected on the broader impact of the past year. Black Voyagers Collective had grown to a $1.5 billion enterprise, expanding its mission beyond travel bookings to include economic empowerment initiatives for Black entrepreneurs. She had established the Williams Foundation, using a portion of her increased earnings to support young Black business leaders developing consumer advocacy organizations in other industries. Already, similar consortiums had formed in healthcare, financial services, and retail, giving Black consumers unprecedented collective leverage in sectors where discrimination remained common. Beverly Holt, the gate agent whose words had sparked the transformation, had experienced her own journey. After losing her job and becoming briefly infamous, she had eventually connected with an anti-racism organization that worked with people who had been terminated for discriminatory behavior. Through that program, she now spoke to corporate groups about her experience and the unconscious biases she had never acknowledged until forced to confront them. "I needed to lose everything to see what I was doing," she admitted in a recent interview. "I'm not asking for sympathy or forgiveness. I'm just trying to prevent others from causing the same harm." The travel industry as a whole had adopted new standards for inclusivity, with other airlines and hotel chains proactively implementing similar measures to avoid pulling a Skyline, a phrase that had entered the business lexicon to describe a corporate diversity crisis. Most significantly, the incident had created lasting structural change beyond symbolic gestures. Corporate America had received a powerful lesson in the growing economic leverage of marginalized communities and the real costs of failing to address discrimination. After the ceremonial signing and press conference, Jasmine had one more appointment at Skyline. She was booked on their afternoon flight to Savannah to visit her mother, her first time flying with the airline since the incident. As she approached the gate, she felt a momentary tightness in her chest, a physical memory of the humiliation she'd experienced. But the scene that greeted her was markedly different from that day at LAX. The gate staff reflected Los Angeles diversity. The boarding process was orderly and respectful. Her executive status was acknowledged without question or suspicion. Once on board, she settled into her first-class seat and was greeted warmly by a flight attendant with a distinct Jamaican accent. Jasmine noticed how confidently she spoke, making no attempt to mask her natural speech patterns. Later in the flight, Jasmine struck up a conversation with her. "I love your accent," Jasmine said. "Caribbean?" "Yes, Kingston originally," the flight attendant replied with a smile. "Been in the States 20 years but never lost my way of speaking." Have you been with Skyline long? Just 8 months. They recruited me specifically after I was let go from another airline that said my accent was too thick for passenger communication. She laughed softly. Skyline said they, hired me because of my expertise, not despite my accent but seeing my cultural background as an asset. The woman had no idea who Jasmine was, just another passenger making friendly conversation. She couldn't know that her story represented exactly the kind of cultural shift Jasmine had fought for. As the plane began its descent into Savannah, Jasmine looked out the window at the vast sky, thinking about how sometimes the most painful moments led to the greatest transformation, and how the power to change systems often lay hidden until someone was brave enough to use it. She thought about her mother, who had cleaned hotel rooms so her daughter could someday have the power to transform how those hotels operated. She thought about all the black travelers who would never know what their collective economic power had accomplished. And she thought about her own journey, from a little girl in Savannah with big dreams to a woman who had discovered that her greatest power lay not in fitting into systems designed to exclude her, but in using her influence to rebuild those systems entirely. The plane touched down smoothly on Georgia soil, bringing Jasmine full circle to where her story began. But unlike the circular patterns of history that so often repeated discrimination without resolution, this circle had transformed into an upward spiral of progress. Not perfect, not complete, but undeniably changed. And that, she realized as she deplaned, was the most powerful story of all. Jasmine's story teaches us that true power often lies hidden until circumstances force us to use it. For generations, marginalized communities have been told their only recourse against discrimination was individual protest or legal action, both important but limited. What Jasmine discovered was the untapped potential of collective economic leverage. This story reveals how systems perpetuating discrimination often continue unchallenged until they face significant consequences. Skyline Airways didn't change because of moral awakening. They changed because ignoring racism became financially unsustainable. Sometimes accountability requires speaking the language organizations understand best, their bottom line. The transformation also demonstrates that meaningful change must be structural, not symbolic. Firing one employee or issuing apologies isn't enough. Real change requires examining hiring practices, complaint procedures, representation in leadership, and company culture. Perhaps most importantly, Jasmine's journey shows that dignity is non-negotiable. She refused to accept token gestures or partial measures. By standing firm in her worth and the collective value of her community, she created lasting impact far beyond one incident. The lesson is clear. Economic power, strategically applied with unwavering resolve, can transform systems that have resisted change for decades. Have you ever had to stand up against discrimination in your own life? What tools or strategies did you use to create accountability? Comment below with your experiences or thoughts on using economic influence to combat racism. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others understand the real impact of racism and the power we all have to create change. Thank you for witnessing Jasmine's journey from humiliation to transformation. May it inspire us all to recognize our own hidden power and use it to build a more equitable world.